preparation perspective, Snitch, when you have the idea and expectation of your opponents and you have a very solid understanding of where they're going to be going battleground-wise, does that drastically increase, or is it kind of like oh, it helps, but it's really not that useful here? And maybe I'm putting too much value here into the BO2 format is what I'm asking.
I mean, I think there's definitely, you know, a lot of strength to being prepared for the battlegrounds your opponent is going to play. And maybe you're right, you know, having less experience on a wide variety of maps could be a factor in, you know, why these Chinese teams are suffering. But I mean, I think we keep seeing Infernal Shrines here. We keep thinking of the same reasons, you know. We keep thinking of the Alex Straza, but it seems like these Korean teams are always ready. Like, again, with the first ban Alex, against these Chinese rosters, it seems like the Korean squads are just very prepared for this Infernal Shrines pick. And I think, you know, what you're saying, is it valuable? I think you can see it here with the Korean teams play. Yeah,
very much so. Will we see the Genji make it through the ban phase, though? And the answer is no. He will make it through. Ballistix, will they snap first pick it here?
Well, that's the thing, is like in Korea, I think he's only been played one game because he's been banned
so often.
So often. Because it just never is seen. So the fact that, you know, we saw it, you know, willingly let through previously, this is Infernal Shrines. Some could argue that, you know, the Shuriken value in and of itself during the Shrine phase, not that much value, but the retreat, the distance, the safety from a Shrine in certain areas allows Genji a lot of room to work comparative to other battlegrounds.
Is there any concern with the fact that Diablo is available, that point-click hard crowd control around so many shrines with the Genji up? Is that part of the reason we saw that hesitation, Snitch, or?
I think definitely, you know, they're thinking of a lot of different things. I think it's actually kind of interesting from the Chinese teams, and I wonder if it's intentional to be leaving this Genji open, because it can kind of be unfamiliar in some ways. You know, if a hero's in the meta all the time, but it's always banned, you don't really have that experience playing it. And the way these drafts are developing may be very different than regular Korean drafts, because they're not expecting to get this Genji. Once again, we see the Reno coming in here. I actually like the Reno matchup into Genji a lot. You talk about the Diablo. I think I would have liked the Diablo maybe a little bit more than the Deck of Cain, but I do like the way that these Chinese teams are leaving the Genji open willingly and then having good ideas for to combat it.
Dread, you and I spent some time watching some of the replays of Ballistix, and despite Hooligan having one insane game on Diablo, it's only been one game for that team. And it's been surprising. It's from some of the other regions, especially what we saw at Western Clash, and now, you know, things in Korea. Diablo hasn't had the same type of priority, but Garrosh on this battleground has never really excelled, but it's something he's comfortable with.
And I'm going to raise this and escalate this kind of question mark on Hooligan and the Warrior selection even more so, because when we look at the kind of I'm going to say the downfall, if you will, of Ballistix, that kind of suddenly not the dominating over a majority of the world, I can't help but feel like it was once the gap closer Warriors fell out of favor and Hooligan was suddenly heavily pressured. Garrosh was very difficult for him to actually pick up once it was introduced into the meta. And so I just find it interesting that we do see that neglect to more standard meta, if you will, on things like that Diablo. And you could say, well, he has no gap closer, that's the problem. But we see the Garrosh priority still there, even over that. So very interesting here from the members of Ballistix and Hooligan. I'm sure we'll be able to make stuff happen there on the Garrosh. But then we do end up getting that Diablo ban here and the third ban for Ballistix.
Malthael stands out to me. We saw Malthael previously. Garrosh, we know, suffers against percentage-based damage. We'll see if TheOne is willing to go into that.
I think if they are planning on Malthael, I think it's very sensible here to not play the solo laner. I think you can let, you know, Ballistix take their solo laner first, but they are going to go for the Blaze instead. I think this style of composition is a lot, you know, more standard. But again, I kind of agree with you. I think I would have liked to see a Malthael style coming out here. I think they could have been a little bit more flexible with the off-laner pick and not picked it so, you know, abruptly. I do think, you know, they are building a very defensive style here, and it seems like they're really trying to deal with this Genji after having let it through, which I think, again, is very sensible from the Chinese squad. It seems like, you know, they have this idea of, we're going to give them Genji, we don't think it's as strong as it used to be, we're just going to pick a bunch of heroes that are good against it, and hope that we can counter the dive.
Yeah, and it's not like we see the, you know, kind of suffering and wave clear conundrum that we've seen some of the other Chinese teams whenever drafting heavily into that safe, passive-oriented play, and, you know, the Johanna would be able to make up for that, along with the Blaze. Jimmy's going to be pretty successful there with the bunker opportunities, the blind coming through, and Deckard's pots. So I really do like some of the drafting choices that we did end up getting from Ballistix. Urel and Jaina, the last there for, for Ballistix. I meant originally they're the one, but I mean, talk about kill potential there for the 4-man of Ballistix, even the 5-man for that matter. The last pick here is going to be Thrall. Even more peel, it feels like, install out there for that Raynor on the back line.
Yeah, honestly, I mean, I feel like this composition is very, you know, it reminds me a lot of North American play, where they had a long trend where they were playing a lot of Phoenix, a lot of these like Thrall triple melee styles. You know, you have the Earthquake, you have the Blaze, even the Joanna. That there's so much peel for this Raynor here, so much to proc his ace in the hole at level 1. Like, I actually really like this composition from TheOne. I think it's very well built into what Ballistix have, and I'm not sure that Jaina is going to be able to deal with this sort of comp. There's not really much room for her to get in, get those cooldowns out, and get a lot of value. I think a lot of her spells are going to be going on Joanna, and I'm not sure that's going to be enough value to be able to, you know, give Ballistix an easy game.
And I feel like with the fact that Jaina's, I mean, the highest wave clear by far on Ballistix composition, we already highlighted some of the Warriors' opportunities on TheOne. I feel like wave clear control, it doesn't mean that they'll dominate the rotations, but definitely a bit more forgiving for TheOne as well. So when it comes to team fight, they hold their own. When it comes to rotation, it seems like they hold their own. TheOne here, at least when it comes to drafting, a lot of thought put into it, and it's pretty impressive.
I really like it. Obviously, the Johanna pick that he said, Jaina, he does do incredibly well. She does do incredibly well, especially you can go Iron Skin cooldown at level 1, so you get that back. And I think that is where Johanna really excels. I am curious about the Thrall pick and how it's played, because I think Thrall can control the front line, can allow that peel potential, but I also think it has the flank potential to get onto a Jaina, get those blow-up kills. And as Kaldor mentioned earlier, something we saw at the Western Clash, going into that Frostwolf build, potentially at 16, to do some of that percentage-based damage against a potential Garrosh. But if somebody, one person, oversteps, the Thrall mainly, you don't have the same way of getting out of there. You get tossed back, a Genji Swift Strike into a Garrosh taunt, some type of combo there, and any type of Jaina damage, you're probably dead. So there is that lethality of Ballistix draft that you always have to be careful of. For Garrosh, obviously around the Skeletal Defenders, you have to be very accurate, make sure your positioning is prime. We'll see if Hooligan can do it.
Sitch, any thoughts before we get into game 1?
I mean, I think I'm a little bit nervous for Hooligan here, honestly. I think this is going to be a game for him to stamp his Eastern Clash magic, you know, as it begins and become that clutch player, because I think this is a very hard Garrosh game, to be honest. I think he's going to be struggling to get good engages and find targets, and he's going to take a lot of poke from this Raynor. There's so much to kite him. Like, I think it's going to be a very frustrating game for the Ballistix frontline, and we're going to have to see if he's going to have that clutch play, as you say, to be able to pull it off.
We're going to have to find out. We have game number 1 here, ladies and gentlemen, ready, as it is going to be Ballistix up against TheOne on Infernal Shrines.
And here we have it. It will be your China representative of TheOne. And of course, we know this draft, we just mentioned it, it should hold up. We'll see if the play is going to be behind it. Most notably, Hugo on Thrall, Mang on Blaze. Of course, Muggle on Raynor. We'll see if that can really hold up. And hey, of course, on Johanna. That's going to be the key.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting there. Magi will be on the Malfurion, though. SDE will be playing Jaina. Jungha on that Yrel. Hooligan playing the tough Garrosh this round. And SC looking for resets there on the Genji. Ballistix. Offensive composition. Will they be given the kills? Or will TheOne show the rising strength here out of the region, the new blood that is really, I feel like, setting the new bar for Chinese Heroes of the Storm?
One thing that we already see, there's going to be a flip back in. Don't think we're going to have a whole lot there, but there's some extra lockdown. The jet propulsion does go out, but we've got Roots in return.
Oh,
got
the Condemn interrupt!
Into the Yrel. That's going to be first blood. That is not how Ballistix wants to start here.
TheOne just come out swinging. Great opener there. The interrupt with the Condemn onto the Yrel attempt escape there on the full channel E. It's you know, it's definitely a tone setter, a tempo setter here for TheOne, but there is a lot that they have to keep control of, and that was another thing that we talked about with Snitch in the draft and some of the analysis beforehand is even when TheOne can get ahead, get control of games, they don't always necessarily know and have the tools to close them out. So we need to be keeping track of, you know, when TheOne actually steps ahead, how much do they get out of these circumstances, because it's Ballistix. They are not going to give up anything for free, J-Hal.
Well, one thing that stood out to me, of course, this is the slightly changed Malfurion. We already see Innervate, the change up in the level 1 build. To pair with that Jaina, we already know Icy Veins post 13 is incredibly strong, but when you've also got Innervate mixed in the middle of all this, obviously you can control that front line more. We also see the adaptation for Blaze on the other side. Understand there is a lot of crowd control, so he's going to try and find ways to find his way out. Just has to snack up 15 globes there, and then he'll have a little bit of extra unstoppable action going on.
SC doing a really good job of trying to get all the dismount and slowing down with those body blocks. The whole purpose for that was to deny as much experience on that bottom lane because Ballistix, with the creative adjustment within the laning situation that they had, just giving them a small advantage, you know, it's able to help them recover a little bit, but with TheOne getting the first kill, it's really just, you know, setting things back to even here. So we're waiting out our very first shrine.
Well, I mentioned about the strategies. Korea, the top 3-4 that we generally see. If you take away Ballistix from that top 4, the main characteristic of each of those teams is flat-out aggression. They're coming out. They are setting things up from minute 1 to try and find out how can we make things harder on you and easier on us. And they do that so incredibly well. Ballistix, they play more traditional style. I don't want to say it's more European or more North American style, but it's definitely a slower pace. They don't force the action as much. And the fact that TheOne has come out and played even with that first kill, this is a very positive sign. There's still a lot to go. We still have our first shrine coming up, but I really like, for TheOne, their start here.
Yeah, and look at this again. Ballistix is actually denying a full wave on bottom as they see the top altar already spawning. Garrosh is there anchoring along with the Impalers going to get picked up on the bottom half. TheOne is looking for that macro pressure with these Impalers, but these are not equal to one another, JL. Very much so. Those opposite-ended Impalers are going to gain a lot more than the Shaman, knowing the rotation will be up towards that shrine. So much so it even demands the response there, a thrall to that bottom lane. This should give a big advantage over to Ballistix. Look at that, getting the setup onto Mang. No body block, or body block is coming in there. Condemn coming through, and that is a reset for SC as he Swift Strike in and right back out.
So I said the lethality is all it takes. One pick, you get that toss in. We saw the follow-up roots. Those are going to be on point. That's the other thing about the Korean region is we see so much of the vengeful roots in North America and Europe. They're like, hey, look, we're going to do things a little different here. So making sure to play around the roots slightly different and give you more of that crowd control. And they do diversify in that level 4 talent. They got that follow-up, they got the blow-up, and of course Genji's always going to be sitting on that E button waiting for that flip, and they executed it perfectly.
But Thrall has made the rotation all the way back up, and with Blaze now getting the response, or has responded, they're going to actually try and contest this. TheOne, it's a very bold move if they want to make that happen. So much so you see actually Blaze forfeiting it over there at the end there, knowing the 5 skeleton defenders is all necessary for Ballistix to pick up their Punisher. And here it is, Punisher #1 there. See what Ballistix can make happen, because we saw what, you know, Korea on Infernal Shrines can already do here at the Eastern Clash, and the answer is they make these Punishers count, every single one of them.
Well, we see the discipline holding on to that iron skin. Most of the times as a Johanna player, you want to flash, you want to get that iron skin and walk away from it. And he's like, hold on a second, if they sidewall me, I need to have this available. So the discipline there, well, I mean, you know, it worked out for a while, but the Punisher, he jumped some more. He got a follow-up kill there.
Hugo.
And now they're looking for another.
Look at that, the in the fray with a little bit of body blocking there for Magi. Another groundbreaker there. Magi should have a root available. You see him getting in position, trying to get it, trying to choke him out. He ends up landing there after the flip over. Not a net for another kill as SC gets away with legitimately what seems like 5 HP. Trying to scrape by. Mang now on full retreat, getting the heals. Groundbreaker #2. Hooligan looking for a flip after Jaina Slow come through with a blizzard. And look at that, jet propulsion out.
Oh, SC though, he's going in for the risky play. He's going to trade out there, but still, Ballistix, I went from 0 to 100 real quick there because, you know, I was complimenting the Johanna play and then slightly overstepping their bounds, and then Ballistix just capping on every single one of the amount of crowd control they have to set up all of these. It's scary right now.
Yeah, and it's even more intimidating when looking at the experience accumulated here for Ballistix, and then knowing that top 4 is just a fraction of HP remain on it. You can look at that thing funny and it will fall over. And that is going to really be able to further the advantage here. And it's what do we see Ballistix get in the uptime of having the 10 advantage, the heroic advantage over the 1. I ideally would like to see a minimum double 4 play with that top 4 pretty much being dead and then something else in the downtime. You know, with bottom Shrine being the next Shrine going to be spawned, that seems to be the go-to focus, and it gets that split pressure. But this early Shaman from Ballistix indicates that they're going to get that pressure a lot earlier than you normally see. They're not going to wait out the Shrine. They just want to get it with the 10 spike, and again, demanding the answer from, or for that Shaman on top.
It gives them so much to do elsewhere on the map with that 10-tier advantage, and we'll see how that comes out as that has been picked up. Tranquility, not the Twilight Dream playmaker for that melee potentially coming in, but keeping everybody alive in that. And Dread, you highlighted earlier what Ballistix was doing to deny the rotation of TheOne, to deny that experience. When we saw that rotation down from SE, he used Swift Strike just to get to that rotation quicker to get the experience. Those small things that we see from these teams, especially at the high level, it's what creates distance and experience. Yes, the kills are great. Yes, objectives are great, but it's the small things that matter. And Ballistix doing a lot of those.
They are doing a lot of those, but I would raise, you know, some of the things that maybe it feels like is a bit of miss here for Ballistix. Again, they did get the top 4, but other than sustaining experience in all 3 of the lanes, nothing has been done with a heroic advantage.
More, right?
I could have done that with a 9-9. That fort was already dead. Nothing has happened here for Ballistix, and this is, I can't help but feel like some of the differences we see. Hold up, though. Muggle way too far out. SC trying to get the shuriken in. Look at that huge top from Hooligan there. Jungha joining in, slapping the hammer around. Magi actually in a bad spot for a moment. He hits a jet propulsion along with the damage from Urel. Stay a while and listen, but this is 1-1.
And now we're looking for more as SC goes in with a swift strike, but we see that ZJZ is able to get back and just manages to get behind there. SC uses the extra concentrate out there, but the one is taking this fight. The Ardent Defender has been used, but he is locked out, seeing if they can get more.
The one is taking Ballistix in these team fights, at least almost trading evenly or even positively here. There's still a lot of macro pressure out, and the experience is devastatingly against them. Hold up, though. Will we see Johanna able to make it out here? Looks like that will be the case. We got SC now joining there on that Genji. His head eating a lot of damage there, a lot of threat. Skeletal defenders are now going to be the focus, and it is dead even. Look at Blaze not even making the rotation out. They're going to try and force this.
Roots go down, completely buying space. Jungha continuing to jump in on that Urel. Again, no Ardent Defenders. That was used previously, did have that cooldown reduction. So with that level 7, as long as he's hitting the targets, he's going to continue to go in, get that slow, get that damage, controlling that entire zoning area. The Roots are trying to respond, but Jungha is single-handedly zoning out an entire team.
SDE with a huge flank there too, splitting the one completely from one another. Flip over is going to lead to the death here of what seems like Johanna, once that Iron Skin drops, hey, trying to do his best. Nice groundbreaker there. Look at that taunt right outside of the bunker. 3 members going to get into the bunker, but Magi with the root says, no, you are not going anywhere, J-How. And that is 4-0. Ballistix wipe the floor here with the one.
Well, you know, the one, they took a fight mid, and well, Ballistix said, hold on.
Won the fight mid.
We're still pretty good. We're still pretty good. Don't worry. They took that fight. You know, the bunker was maybe a quarter second away. And, we actually saw a really good play. We saw Hooligan trying to get in, get that big taunt. Johanna used Iron Skin just to buy time. As you said, that Iron Skin was going down. Instead, the bunker, the rotation was there. The plays are there, but it's milliseconds that could determine a fight, or at least maybe minimize some of that damage that Ballistix put out there. So the one clearly making plays, it's just Ballistix a step ahead in that fight.
And it should be noted that the one took a long time to identify that the Urel damage was too much to ever recover in the fight. If they had avoided, I don't know, 3 E's in a row from Urel immediately with that leap in, I can't help but feel like if that HP starts near that, even that might be a very different fight. But at this point in time, with Ballistix having the 13 talent tier advantage, Punisher number 2 available, it is for sure that they're going to be able to open up a lot of this map. Nice attempt there, cutting off the rotations from the one down to that bottom lane. Going to make it that much more difficult to be able to get clear, and Thrall is still showing interest on top, so the one is just in full defense mode till 13 hits.
They want 13, Dread, but they have Blaze and Thrall mid, and now they have to try and defend this spot lane. Sidewall already down. There's going to be the jump over. There's a swift strike in, trying to get that follow-up damage. SDE has not made it past the wall yet, and that's the core part of their damage, but this is now going to threaten keep more so than anything.
It is going to be able to threaten that keep, and the one still nowhere to be found when it comes to the 13 talent tier. 2-man groundbreaker with the Punisher leaping over, forcing out that Earthquake. Jet propulsion lands, but it's just under Jungha. Hey, falling low. Ballistix recollecting themselves, waiting to get the reinitiation as Train comes down along with the stay a while. Listen, 2-man taunt, reset number 1 and 2 there as SC looks to move in. That Punisher still alive here. Slap against the wall, 3-4. Man, Hugo is able to make it out for a moment, but Magi, he's going to hang the wrist when this root hits. Wow, doesn't throw it out. No cooldown available. Ballistix focus onto the core, and I think they've got it, J-How.
Well, they're going to take this down 90% and falling. Nobody's going to make it back in time. That is going to be Ballistix taking down game number 1. The one fought valiantly, but all of a sudden there was a flip of a switch somewhere. Ballistix was like, you know what? That's cool and all, but we're still Ballistix. We're going to take game number 1. And just like that, Ballistix, man, they turned it on.
And so with that in mind here, J-How, I want to raise to you that last couple seconds of that game and how outstanding it was by Ballistix, how ridiculously offensive it was. Granted, I would argue the one maybe a little bit too late on rotations to answer that situation, but Ballistix just was unrelenting. Now look back to that window of the 11 into 9 and how very much of a different tale it was. And that is something that for me seems very, very curious, how it's almost night and day with when to show that aggression and when not to, even when it seems like a far more clear advantage. And that is why I'm going to send it over to Snitch here and hear a couple more thoughts on maybe, can you give us some insight as to why you would see that passiveness there, but then that level of baiting and aggression from Ballistix later on? Is it just increasing confidence as the game moves on, or?
Yeah, it's very curious. I think it might have just been, as the team fights were going in their favor, they felt like more and more confident, especially when they got to this keep. This last team fight was an absolute domination. I mean, we're talking about Eastern Clash magic. It seems like Ballistix might just have it.
Seems like they have managed to find it for now. But Hooligan, we talked about how he was going to have a hard time that game, right? We expected him to be in a lot more difficult situations, but it never really felt like he was under that pressure too very much in these fights, having a lot of good initiations, a lot of high-impact flips, or into the phrase, depending on, if flipping the ally or the enemy didn't matter. Garrosh was making it happen there for the team.
It just seemed like the crowd control again was there. The change-up in roots, so many times we see the Treant, the Vengeful Roots come in, but Magi is like, look, I can zone out an entire area. I can finish this choke off. And then we saw Jiangha jumping in there, and it was just a lot of that control. The minute he didn't have any more, Roots came down, and you could see that there was this weird split approach from the one that just wasn't stacking up, and it was just, as you said, in the middle of that, it just started to mount up more and more and more. And the amount of aggression, it wasn't really full on. It was enough to just scare them and do enough damage to keep them at bay. And from then on out, they're just like, what if, let's just go. And Ballistix, they found an opportunity, they whittled away at it, and they ended up getting that fight and a whole lot more after that.
I feel like there was multiple situations we saw over those Shrine fights where the one was willing to approach them and start on even footing, but with a bit of poke coming out from the Jaina, and as we said with the Urel plays, then they were in a moment where they weren't able to recover. On the top Shrine, we saw them actually identify, this is something that we can't do anymore, and we're going to back out, and they felt like they were able to stall. But the minute that lack of self-control kind of took over for the one, Ballistix was like, nope, we are prepared to be able to end this game and send it over to another one here. Looking forward towards some of the other maps that we might see available. I will say I would like to avoid the Sky Temple like we got in the last time. I was up here hosting, purely based on the fact that if any of the Korean teams was the Sky Temple team, it's Ballistix. Their rotations are so crisp and so clean on it. Do you guys have any preferences when it comes to Battleground?
Definitely not Sky Temple. I mean, if you really want to go, just go the Battlefield of Eternity route. I don't believe that was banned, so it is available if you want to take that away. But Ballistix, going back to their BlizzCon run of 2016 at this point, it was probably the most impressive play I've ever seen on Sky Temple. I've never seen anything like it. The way that they controlled the map, the way that they've done things, that run there, just ever since then, I've been terrified of the way that they play Sky Temple.
Yeah, I think Ballistix have already made it clear that they're the better team in terms of execution in this series. At least from this opening game, like their rotations were nicer, their chip damage on walls and stuff was smoother. During our discussion with some of the Korean teams, they did mention that they felt like Ballistix were very good at chipping down those walls and getting experience leads that way. I think you could see that in some of this game if you watch the way they rotate and when they would poke walls and stuff like that. It was very interesting to see them manipulate the map. I think, honestly, based on the way this draft phase went, I might actually prefer to see the one take first pick if they're feeling confident, because I actually felt like in terms of the draft, I think it worked out very well for them. I think it was more just an execution factor, and there's only so much you could do about that. If you're not the better team, you're not the better team. But in terms of the draft, I actually really liked the way they took the draft. And I would like to see them take first pick if they feel like they're confident.
So you feel like the ability to sit in that first pick and get that outdraft is going to have a higher impact for the one than if they were to move into that second pick with a more calculated plan, controlling the battleground?
Yeah, I mean, I think from all the other, it's a very big contrast from all the other series today. I think the other drafts from the other Chinese teams have been a little bit lackluster. Yeah. And, especially with some of the other teams having subs, they haven't been super confident in their own drafting. But I think from this first game, it was very clear they had a plan. I think it actually looked very solid. So I think if they were feeling confident to take a first pick and just let Ballistix have the map, even if it's a Sky Temple, maybe that's not as strong a factor as, having the control of the draft and being able to, determine the way the game's going to be played.
Well, we did end up,